So, friends, we are creating our fighting game from scratch in Unreal Engine. In the previous videos, we have added grappling attacks, set up the cameras, and added controller support. The next two videos are going to be dedicated to controllers as well, because I believe that a fighting game must support gamepads in every possible way. Today we will learn how to control one fighter with the keyboard and the second one with a gamepad. And in the next video we will add support for two gamepads as well. Don't worry, right after that we will start working with bloody hit attacks, combos, hit reactions, counterattacks, knockouts, finishers, and other things that we love so much in fighting games. But first, while in this series we are creating a fighting game completely from scratch, there is a more professional way. It would actually take hundreds and thousands of working hours to create and test a production-ready fighting game like Mortal Kombat or Tekken, and it would cost a company hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, if it is your actual goal, and if this is why you started watching this video, I recommend you to still follow this tutorial series to get the in-depth understanding of the principles. But as the solution for your game, I would recommend using my true fighting game engine for Unreal Engine, which is available on Epic Store. It already implements features you may need in a AAA fighting game. You can easily manage multiple characters, attacks, combos, and hit reactions through its blueprint system. It also provides a multiplayer support for local and network multiplayer fighting games. I'm constantly working on improvements, so if you have an idea of your own fighting game, it is the best choice for you. You can find the link to the true fighting game engine in the description below this video. And now let's start with the tutorial. First of all, let's do a little bit of refactoring. You remember we have placed two instances of our fighter characters to our level, but a better practice to spawn them on the fly when we start the game. So let's add a couple of player start instances to the map and delete the actual instances of our characters. Right, and one more player start. We just hit this little button, add, we select basic, and we select the player start. Right, and we align it to the place where we do actually have this, for instance, our fighter. Right, we delete this fighter instance as well. Right. And we select the perspective mode again. And if we start the game, we see that we spawn the default character at the first player start, but we want to avoid it. We want to avoid it because we will spawn our fighter characters manually. So we open our content drawer, we navigate to content, third person blueprints, and we open up the BP third person game mode blueprint class, and as the default pawn class we select none. Right, we compile and we save. Now if we run the game we just have nothing spawns. Let's rotate them towards each other, but it's not actually necessary because it will be rotating automatically. Now, just for the future purposes, let's open up our BP fighter character, and under the variables, let's add a variable and name it player number, right? And let's make it type byte, as we are actually going to have only two players, fighters in our scene. And now it's time to spawn these two guys. So to do so, we click this little button, list of world blueprints, and we open our level blueprint. Alright, let's start with the event begin play handler. Let's right click on the empty space and type event begin play. Right, and drag a connection from the execution pin, and we get all actors of class, and the class is our player start class. And we actually have an array with two player starts, so we get the two copies. We drag a connection from the output array and get a copy, and we get a copy at the first player start. It has index 0, and we get another copy of the second player start, and this num is 1. Its index is 1, right? And then next to execute, we will add a sequence. And before we spawn our first fighter, let's skip assigning gamepad to its controller. To do so, we right click on the empty space and we type get game maps and models set and more. And we drag a connection from the return value and we type set skip assigning gamepad to player 1. Alright, and we connect the first execution pin of our sequence to this node. Alright, and now we get the actor transform of our first player start object. Actor transform, and this is actually enough to spawn our first fighter. So from this execution pin, we drag a connection and we type spawn actor from class, and the class will be our fighter character, right? And the spawn transform is the spawn transform. We provide this transform of the player start, right? And we leave everything as is. This node. And now the first player controller is being created automatically when we load the game. So our player controller for the first fighter will be already created. So we may just right click on the empty space and type get player controller, right? And the player index will be 0. And we want to possess the fighter character that we have just spawned with this player controller, right? And we connect execution pin. Let's set the player num of that pawn we have just created to 0. You remember that little variable that we have created inside the fighter blueprint. Alright, we compile and we save. Now let's spawn the second character. Do so, we will first create a local player to create a controller. And we set the controller ID as 1. and we spawn the player controller, right? And from our second player start instance, we also get actor transform, and we are ready to spawn our second fighter character. So we continue from the execution pin of the create local player, we continue, and we add node named spawn actor from class. All right, and we provide the transform value, and as the class we select our fighter character. All right, and now we possess. We get player controller. We possess the second spawned fighter character with our newly created player controller with the ID 1. So drag a connection from here. We type possess, and as the second input pin, we provide this spawn, and we connect these two nodes, and we get this spawn, and we set player num the value of 1, right? Right. And we compile and we save. Let's now go to our project settings and remove the split screen setting, right? Now we see something strange, but we are going to fix this very soon. And let's align a little bit these pawns. So this player starts, so our pawns stay somewhere. All right. And now you remember we have that in our fighter character we have a face-to-face and a LAN camera functionality, and in the construction script we are trying to find and define our enemy. So each of our players always know where should he automatically orient towards. All right, so we open our fighter character and let's go to the construction script, and at the construction time we actually can not be sure that the second character has been already spawned, and because of this we will define our enemy one more time in other place. To do so, let's first select all these nodes and lapse them to the function. All right, and let's rename this new function to just def enemy. All right, and now we go to our event graph or our VP fighter character. Here, before we turn them face to face and align camera, we should check if the enemy is defined. So we get enemy and we drag a connection and we type is valid and we select the second option, right? And we connect the event tick to this is valid, and if our enemy is valid, then we continue to face and to align camera. If our enemy is not yet valid, then we just call the function named def_enemy. Right? We compile and we save. At least let's see what happens now. Right, and now both of them are aligned towards each other. You know, it seems I have made a mistake in our level blueprint. Let's open up our level blueprint once again. And you see, we have got a player controller 0, but for the second character, we possessed it with the same controller, but we should have been possessed it with the player controller number 1. Alright, let's see now how it works. Alright, and now if we start the game, we see that our fighters are spawned, but no controls are working. I'm currently have set my keyboard and I have plugged my gamepad. So I want my left player to be controlled by the keyboard and my right fighter to be controlled with the gamepad. Alright, we will fix it really soon. First of all, let's in our outliner select BP settings and select the is arena mode just to test it in all directions when we make this little fix. And now we go to our content drawer and we open up our BP fighter character. And if you remember, we have added an input mapping here, but when we spawn characters on the fly, controllers need some time to be initiated. So right before we do all this thing, adding mapping contexts, adding our inputs inside the BP fighter character, right after event begin play, we just place a little delay. 0.2 will be enough. And we compile and we save. And let's check it out now. Alright. And I use my keyboard. Alright. And my left player works. And now I get my gamepad. And it basically works, but my controls are mirrored. So we just want to do what? Do you remember? We go to input. We go to IMC default. You know, I believe that we don't negate the x-axis now, but we set the y-axis to negate. Alright, and let's try it out. So, yes. Now both axes are working just fine. Right, when we perform attack with our right player, we see some camera artifacts, but we will fix them later. And also, if we switch out the is arena mode, we still do not have our y-axis negated. So we also open up the IMC game mode and negate also. We select the x-axis and we select the y-axis and we save. And now when we are in a 2D mode, our gamepad works very well. as well as it is intended. But so this tutorial is basically it. We control our players in a multiplayer game with a keyboard for the left fighter and with the gamepad for the right fighter. And in the next tutorial, we will finally learn how to control them both if we have two gamepads. Because I believe that the most of fun when we play a multiplayer fighting game is when both human players have gamepads in their arms and they just have fun and can get the maximum out of the game. And that's it for today. See you next time. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Subscribe. And remember, if you want to create your own production-ready game, you may have not time or money to make it from scratch. So you can just use my True Fighting Game Engine project. It was intended specifically for those who want to create a AAA fighting game quickly and with no effort, as it already implements all the functions you made for your fighting game. And that's it. Have a nice day. Goodbye.